And that's the history of the civil rights movement.
For example, they can't shut down the town like they tried to do, and they were completely overruled. The police chief cannot just say you can't be on the street after 6 p.m. Now, an elected official that controls that area can do it, I believe, with the legislative body. But let's talk about the fact that you're going to pull out police. The community has been violated numerous times. Let's talk about you're going to pull out police dogs, which is the worst thing you can do for a black community given the history of this country. Let's talk about you're going to point rifles at people that are just protesting. I mean, it's like Barney Fife is running the police department
It's not
down
like
there.
Barney Fife is running. It's like Bull Connor is running it.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Brodsky. Thank you. You're right. It's not Barney Fife.
Stop thanking
No,
me.
no,
I realize
it's Bull O'Connor. It really is Bull O'Connor.
But you have Molotov cocktails being thrown by the
That's
crowd.
what they say. I haven't seen one of them.
There's
That's
reports
what the
about
police say. That's what the
Where
police
there
say.
are Molotov cocktails,
see
the
them?
cops should be pointing rifles. Where people are walking down the
agree.
street with their hands up in the air
I
saying,
agree.
"Don't shoot, we're
I agree.
marching." You don't point rifles at them.
agree.
You don't
As you
put
look
dogs
at these
them.
pictures that we're looking at, we've got police officers in full riot gear, in military camo, as we saw in the McDonald's clip. They're lobbing tear gas and rubber bullets, and they're using these armed vehicles, which brings me to the point that Rand Paul made in
this is what the
Time
police
today.
looks like today.
The over-militarization of police, both in Ferguson in this case, and also, I mean, Watertown, Connecticut got an anti-mine vehicle because it was just surplus from the Army. Is there a problem with an over-militarization of police?
Absolutely, and I think the police have handled this absolutely horribly, and I think the elected officials have handled it horribly, generically speaking now. Anytime you see an M4 weapon being pointed at you, for what reason? They were marching peacefully. And I think everybody is to blame here right down the line, I believe.
I just want to say that Mr. Brodsky made a point that I agree with here strongly when he just said a minute ago, well, 2 points about the Bull Connor comment, but if they're going to do this with reporters there and cameras rolling, the point he just illustrated, what are they going to do when there's no media there? If they're going to be that bold and violate the Constitution and everybody's rights in broad public, what are they going to do when it's just one little black young man that they're encountering?
So then the question becomes, how do you maintain order in a situation like Ferguson? There has been looting, there have been some violent incidents, without going too far, without clamping down to the point where it looks like you're part of the problem.
This is not a Ferguson problem. The New York City Police Department did the same thing in New York during the Republican Convention in 2004. And in many cases, cops handle things beautifully. You can't draw a conclusion about cops, and you can't draw a conclusion about protesters. But when it happens wrong, as it happened here, you do what's apparently happening. The governor's stepping in, state police are going to supervise and make the policy decisions about security. Hopefully, a saner result will come tonight than has come the previous evening.
I mean, I think you have to enforce the law. You can't let things get out of control like happened in New York City years ago. What St. Louis may not have, and there's a lot of crime in St. Louis and East St. Louis, it's a rough town. What may not exist there is a rapport that's been built between communities and the police. Even though it's lacking in New York to some extent, there is a rapport in New York that works, which is why you often don't see rioting here where you see it elsewhere. Maybe that's what's missing, and maybe that can happen in between crises. There's always, like Richard said, there's always going to be a cop that goes too far, or a kid that goes too far, or whatever it is. That's human nature, that happens. But there has to be a rapport built in the meantime.
Just want to let everybody know at home they're looking at a live picture out of Ferguson, Missouri. This is obviously the daytime protest that's continuing now. The problems have not been during the daytime. It's been after the sun has gone down, and that's when we've seen the worst of this.
Andrew, I just want to point out, and I'm giving the NYPD credit. For example, something recent, Eric Garner's funeral, the young man that died in police custody. The NYPD has a community assistance unit for situations like this. And they wear the blue jackets, and it's basically community policing, and it consists of a large amount of African American, Latino officers, and they're out there, and they're talking to people, and the NYPD, now I agree you have to have law and order, but what the NYPD will do is they will have 2,000 cops on standby 2 miles from the location. They're not going to infuriate people further. So if necessary, an officer issues a 1013, officer in need of assistance, emergency assistance, they can be there in 2 minutes. But they're not going to agitate the crowd because there are 2,000 cops in riot gear a mile from here. So you have community assistance officers, and at Eric Garner's funeral, you had nothing but white shirts in front of the church. And you have somebody from the media unit of the police department to deal with the media that actually know all the reporters. So if something comes up, they can step in immediately and diffuse the entire situation. It's never going to work when you have a police force of 70 cops and 67 of them are white. It's not going to work in a predominantly...
Stop. You were doing so well for a while.
No, I'm still doing well in a predominantly black town.
We should be able to construct relationships between police and communities where both black cops and white cops and black citizens and white citizens can be
cops.
treated...
70 cops, 3 black.
That does not tell you that the white guys can't do the job or the black guys
What do you think it says to the black community?
It says that there's something wrong with the hiring practices. I'll give you that. But it doesn't tell you that a black cop is essentially going to be better or worse than a white cop. If we're going to deracialize these things, you've got to deracialize them on every level.
But wouldn't it make minority members of the community feel more comfortable with the police force that's in charge of protecting and serving them if you had a better ratio? I mean,
it seems to me the better way to phrase the question is any police force of 70 human beings that only has 3 African Americans on it, someone is not looking fairly at the pool of people who could become cops. That a really merit-based process would yield you a lot more black officers in that town than they're getting. There's a problem there, but that problem does not tell us whether any individual cop or individual citizen is doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Andrew, I really believe, and I want to hear what the county executive, since he's actually run, an organization and with police and so on, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist. We've got a racial crisis on our hand for the governor, in my opinion. Let's find the highest ranking black official in our law enforcement division. You're in charge, fix it.
And that was the press conference today.
And that's what happened today.
Yeah,
I could have told you that on the first night.
But also the network of church leaders and community leaders. Like in a place like New York, there are church leaders and community leaders that step in that have established those relationships over time. I don't know whether that exists in St. Louis.
They did step in and they met with the governor, which is one of the reasons he took the action he took.
Good.
Right, and he did the right thing, I think. And you have to be very proactive as an executive, whether you're the governor or the county leaders or what have you, to get people there. And the governor's done the right thing. There's obviously bad blood between the police and the residents there. I mean, this friction didn't occur because of one tragic death, as tragic as it is. This has been going on for a period of time. And that's why to bring in the more objective state police is a good move. But you're right. What you would normally do is have everybody sit down during the day to talk with folks before the night to try to get a handle on it.
Interesting that you bring that up because we did see some of that in the aftermath of Eric Garner, and we're going to get into that after a quick break. We head to Staten Island. 6 congressional lawmakers asking the feds to step into the probe surrounding the death of Eric Garner. Is Staten Island District Attorney Dan Donovan being condemned before he even begins his investigation? That's next.